So, hello, welcome back. Another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. What are we gonna do today? That's a very good question because I don't fucking know. It's probably gonna be something Reddit related. Let's have a look what we can find. Because most often there's actually something rather relevant, I'd say. But, sometimes it's just utter bullshit. But we're hoping for the best. Let's actually have a look at the Stoicism subreddit. I lost my gamer rage. A story, and I'm gonna read it. It's not that long, but maybe relevant. Today I came to the realization that I had finally gotten rid of the quote-unquote gamer rage that stuck with me for years. It had been there for as long as I can remember. Whenever I'd fail an objective or lose a team fight, the shame and disappointment and the frustration were so unbelievably unbearable that I'd yell at my teammates, slam my desk or something else as hard as I could, even down to the point of self-harm at the worst of times. My tantrums were completely unacceptable and nobody should have to deal with someone like me in that state. For a long time, I wanted the answer how to have enough self-control to just not do these things. I'd quit games when this would happen a lot for long periods of time, and when I came back, it would feel like I'd have a good handle on it and could just enjoy the game. Take the investments to win out of it. I'd stay away from situations where another outburst was likely. And that seemed to be working for me. However, after some time, the insecurity, perfectionism, and absolute self-loathing came rushing back whenever I'd been on the end of a humiliating defeat, not only in video games, but any time where I'd lost control or couldn't do something like park in a narrow space on the first try, for example, and I'd lash out again. So what changed? To be honest, I'm not quite sure. I think it was the fact that I now managed to put things into perspective, to put my pride aside and just objectively think, what does it really matter? Or let me rephrase that, what does really matter, not what does it really matter? Well, anyway. So what if I have to respawn and come back? I have unlimited response, it doesn't matter. So what if I have to make an extra attempt to back it in straight? At least I'll be within the lines and able to open the door properly. It is okay that I didn't get it on the first try, cause I can try again. I will try again. Not succeeding the first time around isn't strange or shameful, it's normal. It means that I have an opportunity to make a better attempt to double down, because I will be able to use the lessons I learned on my first try, and now my chance of succeeding is that much higher for it. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Well, I'm typically just a lurker. I want you guys to know that this community helped me a lot with achieving a mindset that makes every day feel less like a fight to survive and more like a glorious battle to be the best me I can be tomorrow. Inspiring. Interesting. And as it is so often, I guess, that things change, but we do not really know what changed, and we do not really know what has happened, and so on and so forth. But things have just changed, and things just are now different, which is amazing. And yes, what does really matter? Or does it really matter, whatever it might be about? Most often it really does not. Very, very, very few things actually matter. It always also depends on how you think about things, your perspective and whatnot, which is indeed as well something you can work on or one can work on. I'm just not saying that it is easy. I'm not saying that that it's done in a minute. It really isn't. Unfortunately, but maybe also fortunately, because it might not last that long if it was such an easy process. On the other hand, I just really know those feelings of rage. Unfortunately, having to deal with it and also just getting in trouble because of it, it's not been very easy. At this point in time, I'm actually doing very fine. Sometimes it is also due to the situation that you're feeling or that you are in at the time, and it might also just be due to certain other things, not necessarily only your perspective or how you are dealing with life, but I don't know, when you're ill and then having to deal with difficult situations on a daily basis, I guess it just makes sense that one is on edge more often than normally. Maybe it is family stuff, maybe it is an illness, maybe it is whatever. This can also indeed have an effect on it. On the other hand, maybe the third hand, it shouldn't really matter. One should really be. But what does should mean? It would be optimal to be in one's charge of the situation, whatever situation you might be facing, to just be able to control yourself. And indeed, changing the perspective that you're having, changing the way you see things might do the trick. Is it really important to win this fight in a game? Is it really important to have this grade on a test? On just a regular ass test. Of course, when it is your finals or some shit, then it might indeed matter a bit more. But on the macro, what really matters are very, very few things. I would argue people, I would argue health, and that's probably quite it. And you don't necessarily need that much more. Maybe also money to some extent, because, living off of love and joy and people might not necessarily work. Unfortunately. Maybe it does in the future. Who knows? Let's see what people are saying. This is awesome. I'm trying to quit the rage I had consuming Red Pill and MGTOW content. It was a very toxic community. Any tips would be appreciated. I think with gaming demise it is really important. You can focus on playing to have fun, not to check a list of achievements or reach a certain in-game goal. People can only insult you when you allow them to get to you, which is just really the case. Losing a fight is a learning opportunity and an appreciated interaction. It's the same thing with grades as well. What does a bad grade mean? Quite nothing. Does it really mean that you're bad at something? No, not necessarily. And or on the other hand, is it important that you're good at every fucking thing? No, it isn't. We all have strengths, we all have talents, and it is fine to be bad at something, which just makes you good at something else, probably. There is nobody that is good at, or who is good at everything. Another comment, just remember two things. You're not a bad person, certainly not to your core, since you're making an effort to change. You are the victim of toxic communities and brainwashing. I wouldn't say so. It's a very victimish mindset, and I really hate it. But anyway, while you are a victim, that doesn't absolve you of your responsibility to improve yourself and stop victimizing others. You don't need to hate yourself, but you do not need to keep your pride and ego outside it, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. Congrats, actually use FIFA as a chance to practice stoicism for that same reason. It's challenging not to get pissed and start moaning with that game. Yeah, I think in the end it is indeed about perspective and seeing things in a different light, and at least trying to do so. Does anyone know the primary source material and can link to Heraclitus quote, "No one ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and they are not the same person." Thanks. Actually, pretty interesting quote, which also, in and of itself, gets things into perspective. One is not necessarily, or one is not judging oneself for doing the same mistake again, because it for sure is not the exact same situation. And you're for sure not the exact same person, also in a very physical sense. There are many and none are exactly the same. The one favorite to be a proper quotation is actually a quotation from our Clientes. V12 pota muisi, okay, it's Latin or Greek. The translation being, on those stepping into rivers staying the same other and other waters flow. Clinthis from Arius, Didymus from Eusebius or something. The Stanford Wiki has all of the versions and analysis of them. And there's a bit of an excerpt on that. What is the underlying meaning of the above quote? Sound painting, the first phrase, creates the sound of rushing water. Adding to what you said, this was totally a thing in classical literature, including in philosophical works. In Greek as well as in Latin, it was possible to create images in the minds of the reader by employing certain combinations of sounds, syllables, rhythm, and other textual features. Scholars have been able to identify some of these triggers. For instance, currently we only have Aristoteles' esoteric inner house works, which are quite dense and difficult to get through. His exoteric public writings are supposed to be masterworks in regard to stylistics, and so on and so forth. Then let's actually see if we can find another third great article or post or saying or whatever. What is Stoicism in simple words? Well, I'm not gonna get into that. First lover never dies. My first love broke up with me. I'm wondering if I can still love someone without comparing or even think of him. Do you guys forget your first loves? I think forgetting is never be the case. It's never be the case. But comparing, well, I think one does to some extent. But forgetting and still loving again, yes, period. Period. Or do they still have a special place on your heart after how many years? I think one, and this might be a bit sad, forgets relatively easily. Depends on the situation, depends on the person, depends on the breakup, depends on many fucking things. But in the end, it is about just living and just moving ahead and going on, and it's going to be fine in the end. Approach your troubles like a doctor. How long is it? I might read it. Maybe the first thing. Yeah, let's see. I remember reading something similar from Seneca On the Shortness of Life, which is an interesting book and I guess also relatively well rated. One of my first books of Stoicism I have ever read. The advice was to read the great minds, as life was too short to learn it all from personal experience. I think a case can be made that life lessons learned through personal experience have the most meaning to us, and that depending on the circumstances you may not be able to learn from other people's mistakes/lessons. However, I do think there is a lot of value in reading the great minds. I do think it has given you an edge that you might not have otherwise gotten. I think it is the same with all the books. There is a bit more to it, but I don't want to read it. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't, and it is up to us whether we use the information that we get out of books, and if we do not do so, reading a book is actually quite unnecessary. Of course, gives you a bigger horizon and stuff, but if you do not use the information, if it is intended to be used, then it is quite worthless. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to see you next time. Bye-bye.